a couple of days ago, 2 days ago, and about 200,000 pints of Guinness ago, we opened this conference and I referenced the literary concept of the hero's journey. And that is indeed in full circle where we're coming back to this morning. I'd like to introduce you now to our panel. The panel, let's call them the Coalition for Greener Mobility. We all identify that if you have a challenge which is so stratospheric, you need a group of allies, you need collaboration, you need people working together to meet that challenge. So in no particular order, but sitting there looking resplendent in what I think is a sort of, is it an Irish tweed jacket, is Tad Zurlinden from EuRA.
Just say yes.
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 Steve Cryne, CERC, he'll be opening the batting. Well, Tad will be opening the batting, then Steve. Lynn Shottwell over here in the lovely sort of aqua colour here. Lynn Shottwell from Worldwide ERC. Magali Horbert, resplendent in red, I have to say, from Fidi, many of you know already. Passey from CHPA, in the baby blue, over there in the blue corner. And perhaps some of you caught him in his bespoke tuxedo yesterday evening. Bespoke, where was it? Bespoke and looking absolutely impeccable, I thought.
That part, so.
Yeah. Chuck White from IAM. So if you'd like to open the batting, Tad, and tell us, how is it that this Coalition for Green Mobility came about? Tell us the story.
The story. Okay, so it all basically started out in April last year at the Fidi conference in Cannes, where Fidi had organised a workshop on sustainability, to which I was invited. There was Brian was from IAM was also there, and one or two other people, and RMCs, all sorts of other representatives from moving companies, and we started a discussion. And at that point, it was like I was thinking we have to do something about this. We really got to do something about this. This had been in the back of our heads. And we were in the process of developing a module for EuRA, but it became more apparent that we had to do more. And then we were in Seville last year at the EuRA conference. And I think Jesse Van Sass from Fidi came up to me and he said, any chance you could come and have lunch with Lynn and myself, and we're going to get Steve Cryne to come along. Anything to get away from all these people. So off we went and we sat down and we had lunch and we talked around the table and we thought to ourselves, there's a couple of people missing here. And of course we decided that we needed to invite Passey because her association represents corporate housing providers, and of course we couldn't do anything without Chuck. So we all got together and then we started having Zoom calls and we started talking. We said we need some sort of structure to this. So we produced a document for the coalition. We just called it the coalition to begin with. And we all signed up to the coalition, and then we went a bit further and we started talking about websites, and we also said, well, we need to do some research. And then we had a discussion about who's going to do the research, and finally Deloitte were appointed with the idea of creating a roadmap, and that sort of took us through the rest of the year. But we were meeting every week for an hour, having a regular inter-association therapy session. But we've got to a point now, and I'm going to stop talking because others are going to come in, where the website's set up. We've got the results of the Deloitte survey, and we're going to move on.
Okay, thanks very much, Tad. So that's the backcloth, that's the backstory of how the coalition came into being. Steve, if you'd like to tell us about the goals of the coalition, what is it? We've heard the how it got together, but why did it get together? What are the goals of this coalition? What do you want to try and achieve?
Well, first off, if I may, I just want to say congratulations to EuRA for your 25th anniversary. You've had a marvelous attendance at your conference. Coming out of COVID, that shows resilience. And we're association heads and leaders, and we've all gone through this very difficult time, as many people have. But we've come out of it on the upside, and I just wanted to say, congratulations and thank you for bringing us together here. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. Some of you may have been here last year when we spoke about the trends and what was going on in the industry. And I will answer your question in just a moment.
Don't encourage him. Don't encourage him.
You'll see that we do have some fun, and that's how we get work done. There's three things in life that in my book, right? And it's purpose, passion, and people. And that's really what brought this group together, because the purpose is that we want our industry to be more sustainable. We've got very, very passionate people from our respective organizations. I can look out in the room this morning and I see some of those people. And it is the people at the end of the day. We simply cannot do it ourselves. We're the conductors of the orchestra, bringing people together around that common goal. So that's kind of my message. We'll put the charter up. I don't want to, but there it is. We're going to promote a common understanding, good practices, facilitate learning. There's key words in there: collaboration, and provide the community with the tools, improve transparency, and also figure out, that at the start of this journey, we are here. So, let's say our carbon footprint, and that's a term that I don't really quite understand, and Magali's going to explain all of that. But, we're at this point here, and we say, okay, we're at 10, and we want to reduce that to 5 next year and 3 the next year. So find some meaningful ways of tracking that. But that is our roadmap. We're going to use that term a little bit, but this is what's guiding us through our work. And that will mature over time. It will change. It will adjust. I think we all recognize that in today's world, we have to be flexible. We have to be agile. So that is a living, breathing document, the charter, but it's really what gives us the guidance of doing the work that we're setting out to do. And this is it is a journey. It's big. When we met yesterday and we said, God, this is daunting, I think Chuck used that word, Anyway, I hope I answered the question for you.
Yeah, you did. And by the way, everybody, this is just an initial tour de table. We're just going to ask the members of the panel what they're doing on the coalition panel. And then obviously the floor's open to you to put any questions you want. And I want to reserve quite a bit of time for that. But Steve, thanks for that. So we've had the how it got together. We've had the why and the what, the goals. Lynn, if you could tell us about the steps along the way, how are we going to achieve these goals? Obviously, again, very flexible and adaptable, but maybe the roadmap that we have that you've come to put together.
Yeah, certainly. So, Tad mentioned that we retained Deloitte to help us develop a roadmap for the industry, because we recognize we can't solve this. And I know many people would love it if we could just give you a checklist of here's what you need to go and do. But we're all at the beginning of this journey that's going to last the rest of our lifetimes in terms of how do we continually improve and do better for the environment. And so we retained Deloitte, and they came up with a roadmap that has short, medium, and long-term actions that we can take as a coalition and as an industry to start developing common understanding of what is the terminology that we all can coalesce around. And how I came to this, how Worldwide ERC kind of came to be involved in this, is that in the fall of 21, I was at our conference and I met with a number of CEOs and I said, what's an issue we can help you with? And these were RMC CEOs. And what they said is, we're all getting these RFPs where we're being asked to respond to questions about sustainability, but the questions are all over the place. We're not quite sure how to answer them. And we need to, as an industry, come together to figure this out, to figure out how can we be asking and answering questions in a way that is comparable, across clients and across providers. And so, and they said, and we need to set aside competitive differences to do this. And so I think that's where we came at this as associations too, that we need to set aside our competitive differences to work together so that we didn't develop the ERC standards and the EuRA standards and the Fidi, but we have, as a industry, we have one common set. So, we've started down this roadmap, and how we're really advancing things is we're calling on all of you. We're calling on experts within the industry to come together and join us and help us figure out, what those standards should be, what those common definitions are. How do we draw on the best of what's out there? Because there are so many things, and Magali will talk about this, there are so many existing players who are setting their own standards. Sometimes it's really hard to just sort through it. But we think if we bring enough experts together in a room, we can start to develop what works for our industry, and then we just go out and we need to promote that with everybody else.
Yeah. Lynn, in the past I've heard you talk about the fact that many people think, oh, this doesn't impact, this is really, I'm too small for this, my operation is too small for that. Would you like to speak to that? I mean, the legislation in your country that's coming down the track and is going to impact everybody whether you want it or not.
Yes. So the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, so this is the organization that sets the rules for any publicly traded companies, came out with a 400-page set of regulations last spring requiring any publicly traded company to report on their sustainability efforts, not just kind of their direct emissions, but all the way down to scope 3, which are all the emissions across their supply chain. So this proposed rule obviously drew a lot of concern among the corporate community, because we're like, how far down the supply chain are you talking about? And so if you take it at its highest level, every publicly traded company in the U.S. would have to report on the emissions of everybody in their supply chain around the world, whether or not that company is big or small, or publicly traded or privately held. And so that's how it could trickle down and impact all of you. Now, this regulation, we're waiting for of course, the SEC received many, many comments. They probably will be subject to a lawsuit because some are saying this is kind of beyond the scope of their authority. But the bottom line is that this is coming. And so if it's not the SEC, I know, the European Parliament is also looking at legislation. Other regulators around the world are starting to think about this. So we know it's coming, and what we have to do is just prepare as best we can. And I think we do that by kind of looking at our own businesses, taking actions there. But then also the value of a coalition is we have to kind of band together to tell the governments what we can and cannot do, because they don't know our business. And so we have to help educate them. And certainly when they were writing this, they weren't even thinking about our industry. It's just not on their radar screen. So we've got to help educate them.
Yeah. I mean, the basic rule of lobbying, get in soon and get in hard. I think that's the thing, yeah. Magali, well, we've heard the how the band of heroes got together. We've heard what we want to achieve. We've heard about the steps. There's always tends to be often in such sort of coalitions, then there's a dislocation between what we all want to do and how we go about doing it. So in terms of delivery, apparently you're the woman. How do we deliver the goals, or how do at least we get started on our journey, Magali?
My shoulders all of a sudden became much bigger than I thought. But the thing is, what sometimes happens is that you forget to take to look at things in the time frame and put things in perspective. We actually only started working together 7 months ago in July. And there's only so much you can do in less than a year. So yes, now we've set the framework, we've set the baselines. We know more or less where we want to go. But now we're at this very difficult transition phase of, okay, so we know what we want to do. Now we actually need to go and do it. And that's where we need the help of everybody in this room and beyond, because as membership associations, we can really only do what our members tell us to do, and with the help and the support of our members. So I think that's where we are at now. We have our roadmap, we have our charter, and now we have broken that down into working groups, into very short-term and medium-term priorities. But now we need all the help we can get to actually do the work and identify what is it that we can really actively and pragmatically do. But for that also, we need the help of everybody here to tell us what exactly are the challenges that you see on the ground. Because as to Lynn's point, we represent a very, very global, very, very diverse supply chain with sometimes different interests, sometimes different focus points, sometimes different priorities. But in the end, we are all part of an ecosystem. And in sustainability, my sustainability friends will have their eyes light up. We talk a lot about systemic change and systemic thinking, and that's what's so important here, and that's where we are so important as well, is that we can only really work towards an impactful change if we look at this from everybody's point of view and we understand exactly how each of our actions impact other actions. So I think that's really, really important, that what we're trying to do here is create a space where all the stakeholders get to sit around a table at an equal position and discuss what are the things that we can actually practically do to really make change meaningful for all of us. So I think, but that's the difficult thing. Of course, we all have our priorities. We all want to go really, really fast, but we just need to take a step back and think, okay, so this is something that we need to look at from an entire ecosystem point of view.
That's a really interesting take, Magali, because often people think they're being dictated to from on high, whereas you're saying, no, everybody's equal around the table. We really want to treat everybody, we want to hear from everybody, equal stakeholders.
I think what's important to note as well is that we don't have all the solutions yet, because actually no one has the solutions. If you look at all the industries in the entire world, no one really knows what we're working with, so no one has the solutions all written down. So I think what I find personally really exciting is that right now we are at a position where we actually get to say what sustainability means in global mobility. But if we don't do that now, within 3, 4, 5 years, someone else will have figure that one out, and then the push will come down, and then we won't be able to do anything about it anymore. So right now is the moment where we get to sit down and lay the rules, but we can't do it alone. We need everybody's help as well to identify what we really need to do.
Thank you, Magali, which brings me with a seamless segue now to Marianne, because we have the basic band on our hero's journey, but you've all read Ulysses and you've all read Homer's Odyssey. We all know that. But if you look at Star Wars or if you look at Lord of the Rings, the band gets going and then allies join. More people join. You encourage people to join. Marianne, if people want to get involved, how can they get involved? How do you want people to sort of put their hands up and get involved?
Any way that you can volunteer would be welcome. So we do have a website. It's greenermobility.org. The real power, as Magali and others have alluded to, is working together. So there is a get involved and contact sheet on the website, or come to any of your association leads and just let us know you'd like to be involved, and we will get you involved. The power of the coalition really is all in working together. So as we've all stated, and as you all know, very complex issues that we're facing. We don't have all the answers. Our goal is really to be the catalyst to bring all of the people that are working together in sustainability space in one place, so that, as Magali mentioned, everyone has a seat at the table and we can try and create what we can realistically do together. And so rather than wait for it to be mandated down to us and perhaps they're completely unrealistic, the next step is really working with working groups. And there are a variety of working groups, from everything from the glossary of terms that Steve has headed up and that many of you have been involved in, and that work's almost complete, so we're speaking the same language, so we even know what we're talking about when we're talking with each other, to others. And so some are cross-sectors over the mobility continuum, and some are sector-specific, so that we're going to get together what's happening now, what we can achieve together, where can we get to, and outline the challenges of perhaps some of the unrealistic expectations, and what does it look like for us to really get there, and for us to get there together, what might be the barriers that are put in our way. So in the communication and the power of all of us talking together, because we all work together to serve the people and move people around the world. So it's really facilitating that conversation so we can come up with the solutions together. And the way we always have, through education, through cooperation and collaboration with best practices, the collaboration among competitors. I think Lynn mentioned our associations compete in a way for your attention, for your time, for your talent, for you to come to our conferences to learn about what's important in all of our industries. we want to put that all aside, and it's really all of us working together to try and come to some common solutions. If not common solutions, at least some common steps we can take together. So as I said, we have the first step of what we're using a common language so we can all talk together. And we want to create the base, I mentioned best practices, but the base to educate RMCs, clients, anybody in the space, legislators, to what we really can do, and how we can all get there, again, together. So I think Magali mentioned it, but you are all of our resources. We are not the experts in, well, except for Magali, but the rest of us are not experts in sustainability, but we really do, but we are the experts in pulling the resources together, and that's what we're looking to do.
Thank you so much for those insights. Now, Chuck, I'm going to ask you to draw the threads together of this panel discussion before I open it up to the floor. In terms of motivating the troops, in terms of solution, in terms of active engagement and collaboration, in terms of resources, time and treasure, let's just hammer a few things down here. What's your message to the troops before we send them off on their hero's journey?
So, well, thank you. I appreciate you letting me come at the very end to be able to wrap all this up. It's been an amazing experience working with these other 5 individuals. It's almost like a master class in leadership. And I wish that we had brought this group together. I hope we stay together on further journeys that we're going to take together. But I have learned so very much from this group, and just want to say I appreciate all of you. I probably am the real novice on this topic coming into this group. I didn't know ESG from ABC, and it's a whole new language. And we are all starting, as has already been said, there is no industry that has a level of maturity as far as sustainability. So we are building this plane as we're flying right now. But I will tell you, and I will repeat what everyone else has said, we are not the experts, but we feel that we can help lead the mobility industry down this path to build some type of standardization across the entire industry that is a framework that we can all build off of to try to make a better environment for us to work in. And I put environment in quotes there. But I want to level set this just a bit, if you allow me. The excitement that has been generated from our working together, one of the first times that you see all 6 of us sitting together trying to work in a collaborative way to come up with solutions, not just for our association, not just for our sector, but for an entire industry. This is incredibly new. I have been to, I'm doing my world tour right now. I've been in South America with a movers association that works in the Latin American and Caribbean region. I've been to Magali's meeting with Fidi, which was in Bangkok in Asia. I have been now to Europe to work with EuRA here. And the excitement around this topic is palpable. We feel it. Unfortunately, I think people are looking for this easy roadmap, this easy book that I'm going to hand over to you and say, magic, here's the solution. This is a work in progress, but we can't achieve anything, again, to footstop this, without you. We need your engagement. We need you working with us and bringing what your experiences are, what knowledge that you've gained to this group to be able to then spearhead us and leapfrog us forward. And then I'm going to say the other bad word, money. Each of the associations put a significant sum of money into this group to be able to hire an entity like Deloitte, who has sketched out this bit of a framework, this roadmap moving forward. But we're not going to do this on our own. So we need your time, your energy, your knowledge, But at some point, we're probably going to reach our hands out and say, we need a little bit of money to push this forward as well. So I'm the bad guy. I got to talk about that. But that's okay, because I think in the end, the positives will come forward and provide you what your organizations need, whether you be small, medium, large, publicly traded, because I think it is with this leadership that success will come forward. So,
Thanks, Chuck.
Sure.
Right, so that is what is happening. We are on our journey. Questions from the floor. We have a couple of roving mics. If you put your hand up, and please give us your name and who you work for. That's always helpful because we can't always see at the back of the room.
I'll move a bit closer as well, so you've got a face. I'm Pauline Collins from EuRA Home Vormen in the Netherlands. So my question is, you've started the journey, you've got the beginnings of your band here today, but how do you and we encourage more people into the room? Because we represent in the room today a very small percentage of the registration. You made a very passionate plea at the opening ceremony, which was very well attended, about the hero's journey. So what can we do to fill the seats? Well, yeah, I was going to say maybe have the session earlier in the conference, but
it's been up to Dom and Tad to bring the bar in. Exactly.
9:30, time for bed.
Well, go ahead, Matt.
Magali.
Pauline, you already know what we need to do because that's exactly what you said back in Bangkok in our session. It's true. Those of you who are sitting here are the ones that already know about the importance of the topic and already feel very much engaged. But a systemic shift or a mindset change happens with incremental pushes. So, Pauline, what you said in Bangkok was exactly that. You said that even though you're very passionate about the topic, in each meeting that you had before that session, you never spoke about sustainability. And you said after our session, you would make a point out of every meeting, mention what you as an individual person and you as a company were doing from a sustainability point of view. And don't underestimate the power of peer pressure. It works really, really well. So I think the most powerful thing that all of you can do is just put the topic on the table every single time you can, not only with your peers, but also with your association leaders, not only these associations, but all kinds of groups that you're part of. Make sure that you voice it, because the more the topic comes up, the more people will take it seriously and the more will actually happen. I think that's one of the most powerful things that anybody can do.
I will say, you can either do it now or you can wait till it's dictated and the pressure is on you. Every time you have to respond to an RFP nowadays, you're asked questions around this topic, but they can be so far afield that it is really difficult to respond in a responsible way. What we're hoping to do with this effort, one of the things is to be able to standardize these processes so that you understand what it is you need to be able to do to compete, number one, but to do good. Doing good pays, I believe. And so finding a way to make yourself a leader, finding a way to share the good news about what sustainability means as we bring forth educational tools and information. Again, it's about sharing. I really do believe you've got to be sharers.
And to build on what Chuck was saying in terms of building these resources, we're really looking at the website and the coalition to be kind of I'm going to say a funnel, but that's not quite the right word, a common space to bring all these things together. So there's one place that we're guiding everyone to actually funnel everyone's efforts through. So if you're being asked by whatever association, or if you just have resources available, we're always looking to add to those. Please forward them on to us so that we're all, again, building to the common language and the common base of knowledge that we're all building together. So please send things along to us, because as we've already said, we can't do it alone.
Any other contributions from the panel on this one?
This is also slightly different from GDPR because there was so much hype about GDPR, or there is hype about sustainability, but I think it's creeping in a bit more than, but it will creep in, and then all of a sudden
Yeah.
the European Union and in the United States and everywhere else, suddenly all these regulations will come in and everyone will throw
From
their
on
hands
high,
up in
yeah.
horror
Yeah.
and say, oh my God, what are we going to do about this now? So we've got an opportunity to start now and maybe influence that. Yeah.
Can I add to that as well? One of the reasons CHPA got involved is that we are part of the mobility supply chain. You know, our temporary housing providers, service department providers are a small piece, an important piece, but a small piece. But our smaller member companies that are all part of the supply chain are looking to us and they're saying, this is overwhelming. We can't do this. We don't have the funds to do it. We don't have the knowledge to do it. What can we do? Where do we go? How do we do this? Just as they look to us for, you know, other education and best practices. So that's really what we're really trying to compile.
Thanks, Marianne. Chris, you had something to say, Steve?
What was it, Bob Dylan?
Who?
Random?
Bob Dylan, you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone,
Yeah,
because the times they're changing.
yeah.
And they're changing really, really quickly. So to the, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name. Colleen. To answer your question specifically and in a practical way, we've got a LinkedIn group. Join that. You know, we'll socialize the messaging, the website. Very practical. There's a contact form on there. You'll see that we've got the 5 or 6 working groups. You can click on any one of those. It'll ask you if you want to make a submission. Like if you've got a paper from your company, your organization that's related to, give me a word.
Sustainability?
to not just sustainability, but in one of the areas. Say it's in corporate housing or in relocation management. This is going to be the repository
Yeah.
of all that information, and we're not writing that stuff. We're taking it from you. And we're putting it into that library of resources. Along with, you know, like we've done the glossary of terms. Dominic was part of that working group and other people that I probably can't see. But we've started to develop a standard language across our industry. But we rely on you to get that done. So really, you're ambassadors. The people in this room, you're ambassadors. And we look for your goodwill to help us spread the word, the gospel of the coalition.
The one thing that I will say, so ESG, I have learned that terminology, and we have been very, very, very focused on the E, the environmental piece of sustainability, but it's a much larger topic. And the social and governance side of ESG sustainability will also be something that I think this group will begin to tackle as well. Many of you have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. These are critical pieces of sustainability as well. And I think that we have to, again, as the mobility sector, have to deal with these in a very common way. And this may be even more difficult than the environmental side, because what some of this terminology means in the US is very different than what it means in Asia and what it means in Africa and other parts of the world. So even more to put our arms around in dealing with many of these issues that are very socially impactful that we've got to get to as well.
I mean, and just to follow up on that, so a lot of these things are coming down from the very highest level. So it's driven by, you know, the UN's 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And I think what I've been in meetings for many years at the UN about migration issues. And it's an issue you can't solve. But what we've realized is that politicians don't have the answer. Businesses don't have the full answer, civil society. So it takes everybody coming together to tackle these really huge problems. And that's, again, what we're trying to do here to say, like, let's collectively figure out what our voice and our position is. And I don't think we'll all be long gone and retired, probably even Magali before this even really becomes before we have solutions, right? Because it's going to be an evolution. We'll get a solution, we'll have something for a while, but then we'll have to continue to evolve it. And so it's, but we all need to be there and doing our part while we can.
Thanks. There's other questions? Oh,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm Caroline from ARPAN International. It's an international moving company. And I find that it's great to talk here amongst ourselves, but it's also very important to get the corporate client at the table, because they impose all these sustainable, service level agreements on us, but when it comes down to booking the service, they would rather ship a half-empty container around the world instead of sending a wooden box, a lift van, which would also do the job. Okay, but the lift van, to ship that around the world is much more expensive than the half-empty container. But where does the sustainability then, we're losing out on sustainability. So they are price sensitive, impose on us the sustainable, service levels, but still don't understand what's all behind it. So I think we have the responsibility to not educate, but to inform them of everything that's involved in the process, to get to our common goal, not only our goal, but also their goal to be sustainable.
You're
Absolutely right.
You hit the point on the head. We've had that exact discussion multiple times to get the corporates in the room to be able to talk to them. I raised a question at a panel that we had earlier in the meeting, and it was about these RFPs and whether at the corporate level we all have to respond to these RFPs. They're going to have a section in there about sustainability and where you are in that that roadmap on sustainability. And I asked the question, but does it matter in determining whether or not I might have the greatest sustainability answer and solutions and programs in place, but if my pricing is not where you want it to be, then does that matter to you, Mr. Corporate? And so you're 100% right. We've had these discussions. We need to get those entities that are issuing these RFPs, and not just at necessarily the procurement level or the HR level, but it's got to be at the top of organizations so that they really understand what they're asking for, what the cost implications are, what the carbon emissions effects are, et cetera, so that we are all on this level playing field, that it is standard and there is some common understanding on this. I think we have an opportunity with the 6 that are here.
Yeah, and I would add to that, and I actually think we spoke about that in your session as well, Caroline, is that, now channel my internal French revolutionary here again, don't underestimate the power of this two-way dialogue and two-way education, because we in here are experts in global mobility. The corporate level is not. For the corporates, it's one part of the big scope of activities that they do. And when you take it from a sustainability point of view, at corporate level, they will look at sustainability from a corporation point of view. For the corporation, the global activities is tiny. They will not think about sustainability, about global mobility when they talk about sustainability. But for us here, global mobility is the core of what we do. We live and breathe global mobility, so it makes sense that we define what sustainability means in our world so that we can then go to them and say, this is what sustainability really means, and this is what you should be putting in your RFP so that it makes sense. And they will be actually happy because they don't have the solutions. They are looking for the solutions. They will take that and then go to their corporations and say, this is what sustainability means in our department, and it ticks all the right boxes. But for that, we have a very small window to actually put that all into a way that makes sense. And that's why, again, I really believe we have a sense of urgency here to do things quickly. And companies like ARPAN, who have a bigger sphere of influence, are key in that. Because if ARPAN pushes back to the clients, then actually the smaller players in this entire supply chain will be able to do so as well. So I think that's the big responsibility of all of us here, is to really realize the power that we have now to make sense of it for us as the entire industry.
So if I could just say, because we have, so at Worldwide ERC, we have a Sustainability Advisory Council that includes players from across the entire ecosystem, including corporates. So I agree with everything that's been said here. We have to come together. And we had last year at our conference, we had a working group that came together to help develop the roadmap, and then we had a larger meeting. But we talked about, part of it has to be, how do we incentivize green moves? Because they may be either more expensive in some cases, or we have to educate the employees too. So I think there's a lot we can do. We need to continue to have the corporations involved in the discussion, because we also did a research study where we went out and talked to 600 chief human resource officers around the globe and said, is sustainability kind of one of your corporate priorities? And for the majority it is, but they also are, everybody's at the beginning of this journey. So we have to continue to talk and inform as we go forward.
Yes, hello. Martina Meinhold, Management Mobility Consulting France. We are a small destination services provider. And the challenge for us is it's an extremely wide and range subject. I mentioned this last year in the Ignite conference about sustainability for those who attended. Last year I mentioned we had a green team who had already a lot of ideas going into any direction. In the meantime, the green team is in charge of ESG. It's even a wider subject. And when we were going into different directions, one day my daughter told me, she's a sustainability consultant, she told me, Mom, you need a structured approach. You're going into every direction at the same time. That's very good. But please, or I give you the advice to be more structured. So what we are now doing is we have identified the different stakeholders, not only within the company, consultants, external, biggest clients, subcontractors, local association, etc. And then different, well, all challenges and structured into the 12 biggest challenges after all these interviews, to set up a materiality matrix. We are now in the middle of this process, which is extremely long. But if you're interested, I would be able to share our approach. Perhaps that can be also of interest for your, for you it must even be larger, as you are so many organizations. But I think everybody needs to be included of all these different the most important stakeholders in order to find priorities. That would be my suggestion.
We'll take all of that information. Thank you. Send it.
Exactly what the website is all about. It is a resource for both giving and taking in of information, so that your experiences and what you have learned can be shared with other organizations that are similar to you, so that they are able to learn from what's already happened.
And Martina, you've just hired yourself to be part of the
Working group.
You've just
working group
volunteered,
for
yeah.
destination services.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes.
Miriam Dignan from Cornerstone Relocation Group. I think what people really need is an idea bank of practical ideas, because there is a lot of generalizations floating around. Strategy this, project this, you know, and people on the ground just don't know what we're talking about. So, you know, my lovely colleague here in Luxembourg, she just gave me a wonderful idea. She says, what does this all mean? Are we supposed to be doing home findings on horses? And I just think that's the best quote ever, because people are confused. When you say diversity, equality, and inclusion, that's not about the environment. But what does it mean for a small DSP or a small family company? You know, diversity doesn't need to mean, you know, in certain areas what it should mean in London, for example. It could just mean, are you promoting the same number of women as men? Do you have a wide range of ages? You know, there's got to be some practical guidelines in terms of sustainability on the environmental side. We don't want to hear anymore that you don't print your emails. You know, that's so 1990s. So what do we mean? And everyone has this sort of fear of the corporate instructions coming down. What is your ESG policy? What is your sustainability policy? They don't know as much as you think they know. They're looking for ideas too. Yeah. So our clients are coming to us and getting us to fill out these audits. And what we really need to say is we advise companies on how to be greener. So we will use, to name drop one of our suppliers, Home Sweet Home, who do a discard and donate program so that they are moving less stuff abroad. You know, get rid of your old furniture, don't put it in storage. You save money, you save fuel, you save trees. Another of our suppliers had a great conversation with Jesper at Expat Ride. So we were talking about why don't companies, our clients as an RMC, put into their policy that when you rent a car, it has to be a hybrid car or an electric car. And then what are the practicalities around that? You do not want an electric car in some parts of the UK. You will break down and never be seen again. So get a hybrid. You can have an electric car in Oslo because there are charging stations everywhere. That's practical. Right. As a DSP, you can say we only use electric cars. How much petrol are you saving? What is that impact? How many journeys did you do last year? What is that impact? How many trees have you saved? What have you taken out of the environment? So I do think that people are desperate for practical ideas. And so a panel like this, as expert and informed and great in terms of future leaders of this initiative, we also need to have someone up there who says, this is what I've done, this is what I've told my clients to do, this is a report I've created with 10 practical steps for all of this: diversity, equality, inclusion, social governance, sustainability. Give us one example of all of those 6 things.
So here's what I would say. We are in the process of forming working groups for each of the different sectors within the mobility sphere. And we want to bring forth those practical applications and suggestions on how to start and then move forward on all of these topics. So we're going to have a group for corporate housing. We're going to have a group for the moving. We're going to have a group for the DSPs and get down to the particulars that you are looking for to say, here's maybe where we start, and here are some steps along the way that you can then make improvements and then to be able to report to your clients, et cetera. Again, this is where I was trying to go maybe when I first spoke, is trying to level set this. There was such excitement as I went from conference to conference about the idea that the 6 of us had gotten together. Now give me something. Yeah. And I will tell you, we've been meeting at least an hour a week for months now. And it is such a huge, as you're talking about, it's such a huge issue. We're getting to the point now that I think we're going to be starting to have some deliverables to you that are practical, that can be applied, and then we will continue to build on. But we need, as we've said already, we need your expertise. What are you doing? The other woman that spoke, I think it was from ARPAN, or I'm not sure where you're from, but the DSP side, that you have some practical things that you've done. You've had some questions that have been raised. You need answers to this and this. Join these individual groups, and we'll come together and provide some practical responses for you.
And there, I think right now, some of that information is happening at each of our individual associations or at our each individual conferences as a session or as tips or as a peer-to-peer learning session. So now it's time to feed that into these groups, to elevate it, to create those types of transparently standard practical tips. So that is what we're looking to do, feeding all these little pieces together and then compiling them so that there are some practical things. You know, in the corporate housing, it was getting rid of single-use plastics, from something like that all the way up to putting solar panels on their warehouse. So, you know, not everyone can spend $100,000 to put solar panels on their warehouse and move completely away from traditional electricity, but other, you know, the smaller tips. And so that's really what we're looking to do as well. I spoke a little bit earlier about the smaller companies and them really looking to us when they're working not only on their business, but they're working in their business. Again, from the corporate housing side, they're setting up apartments, they're making beds, they're cleaning toilets. And then they're also trying to work strategically on how they can build their businesses, and then you put all of the ESG on top of that to be able to respond to an RFP to grow their business. What can we give them that they can say, okay, I can't do this, but I can do these little incremental pieces, as you mentioned, and I can show progress. And we've talked a lot about, as the coalition, not only just showing, here we're at the end of the journey, because there is no end to the journey, or at least no one's identified that yet. But it is, where are you showing progress so you can then respond to corporate clients and saying, this is our ultimate aspiration, but here's the actions we're taking in the evolution of how we can get there together.
Thanks. I'm going to take one more question from Isabel, and then we have to wind the panel up.
Hey, it's not a question. We actually had a full day of a sustainability symposium on Tuesday where I learned a lot. And thank you, Magali. You are indeed a great teacher, as everybody else on the panel has said this. And one of the charts, one of the graphics that you put up on stage on Tuesday was precisely the carbon emissions in our industry, which are, of course, so different if you're coming from the moving industry or DSP. And going back to Miriam's question, and one thing that's been really important for us to understand is ESG is environment, social, and governance. And 72% of carbon emissions come from a household goods movement, and only 0.3 from DSPs. So when you understand this, you say, oh, so I'm a DSP, there's not much I can do about it. Well, no, there is, because ESG is, some need to look after being greener, others need to have their metrics or materiality, which is something we haven't talked about. We don't have the time, but it's all about how you measure how your impact is in this. And that means that, as what we talked about on Tuesday, is as DSPs, maybe we should be focusing more on the S and the G and the governance. And I know, Magali, you would have another full day to talk about this, and it was really, really interesting. So one thing I think everybody should do is register for more sustainability symposiums, that's for sure. But just to give you this idea, this not only about buying hybrid or electric cars, we can make a huge difference if we're in the DSP and not the household goods, then we will be showing metrics on social and governance rather than environment. And we started off with Steve talking about the 3 Ps of we are a people, passion, purpose organization. And there's one really good way of thinking about this metrics and materiality and measuring impact, which is thinking people, planet, profit, right? So.
So just a quick, so the graph that I showed was actually the greenhouse gas emissions report of one RMC that did a measurement of their scope of emissions, where actually most of their emissions lie in their supply chain. And that's where 3/4 lie with household goods, 1/4 with temporary housing. And actually, from an environmental point of view, DSP is very, very small. And that's where we got to saying that actually maybe the true power of DSP, because of the nature of what we do, lies with the social aspect, because actually you are the first window into a new culture, and you actually get to define what that first impression of a new person coming somewhere actually is, and that's actually really, really, really powerful. Now, back to your point, what you said before, actually one of the direct deliverables of Tuesday's session is a joint project that Fidi and EuRA have been talking about for many months, but we really didn't get to doing it, is to come up with a very, very simple guidelines document of what it means to be sustainable when you are a DSP company. And so we worked on that a bit on Tuesday. You will probably be called on, for example.
Martina will be called.
Oh yes, absolutely. And the idea would be, in not too long a time, really come with a very, very simple, here are some ideas that you can implement in your company to already start making sense of this topic in your very particular scope of what you do. Because that's the first step that we're trying to make sense of now. We did that in Fidi a year and a half, 2 years ago. We came with a very simple guidelines document, what it means to be sustainable when you're a mover. Well, most of the ideas actually are not linked to moving, they're linked to any kind of business already. You can already have a look at there and come with some ideas. But it's really bringing it all down, making sense of this very, very complex topic, which actually is not rocket science when you start looking into it. Lots of complicated acronyms and words, but once you actually start making sense, it is just being a decent human being in a decent world. It basically boils down to that.
It's 'tis ever thus, the daunting prospect of the hero's journey, one step at a time. So I've got to wind this one up. We have overshot the mark a tiny bit, but nonetheless it is such a crucially important issue. If there's one call to arms, I don't want to put you on the spot, but just think one call to arms that you would make to the body of the CERC, what would that be, Magali? One call to arms.
Don't underestimate your power.
There you go. And Steve, what would be your call to arms?
Engage.
Engage. And Lynn?
So share whatever information you have already.
And Tad?
Well, I think that we've had green issues and we've had conscious capitalism, and it's been around for years, and that's sustainability.
That's it. And Marianne?
Share your expertise because we are much stronger together.
And Chuck?
Engage.
Engage.
We need you.
Engage.
I don't care, Steve. Okay. Well, Steve told me to say that, so.
Do you know what and always blame Steve. Okay, that's the other call to arms. Listen, thank you very much indeed for your participation. You know, despite the stratospheric hangovers I'm sure that are going on in the other part of the building, thank you for coming here today and for your participation in this very important part.